As the saying goes, sometimes in life it's more about who you are and who you know rather than what you are and what you know. Well, last night the Detroit Lions definitely showed that they are trying to show who they are by recruiting one of the NFL's top trade targets. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. Folks, I can tell you this right now. For those of us that actually decided to, stay up last night and actually, watch the NFL Honors Awards, hugely disappointment for about, I would say, 95% of the entire event, because pretty much the Lions were once again overlooked. Once again, no Lions player got pretty much any sort of recognition. Dan Campbell was overlooked for, Coach of the Year. So it was pretty much a disappointment of an event from an awards perspective. However, though, I will say this. If you knew what to look for, the event was not a complete waste. If you knew what you were looking for, it actually could have been the foundation, it could have been the groundwork for potentially, what's the word I'm looking for here? Accelerating a potential massive trade in the works later on down the road. Now, what exactly am I referring to? Here's exactly what I'm referring to. If you happen to pay attention on Twitter and also on Facebook, you've probably seen this picture. Now, this picture was taken at the NFL Honors Awards ceremony last night. You ought to recognize the 3 guys that are in this picture. One is Jared Goff, the other is Aiden Hutchinson, and the third is defensive end, edge rusher of the Cleveland Browns for the current moment, Myles Garrett. Now, what does this picture signify? Well, if we're going to be entirely honest, to anybody that knows what's probably going on, probably not a whole hell of a lot. Because at the moment, all it looks like is 3 guys that are just having a conversation. And that's about as much as we can infer from the actual photo itself. But what's also that saying? A photo means 1,000 words. Okay, here's what I can say. For Lions fans that particularly, and I mean this, particularly want to have a trade happen, again, for Myles Garrett. This is a photo that definitely has already sent shockwaves through the entirety of the NFL fan bases and definitely through the Detroit Lions fan base. Because it looks like, on at least a potential level, that both Jared Goff and Aiden Hutchinson are trying to recruit Myles Garrett. Now, why is this significant? It's significant because even though I'm hypothesizing, even though I'm making a bit of a stretch, let's consider the fact that you have 2 of the biggest players from your team that are actively talking at an event to a player who at the very least has expressed he wants out of Cleveland and at the very least has been asked about the potential from reporters about, have you thought about playing for the Detroit Lions if it came down to that as an option? Now, what was Myles Garrett's answer to that question? His answer to that question was he hadn't thought of it yet. Well, that word yet is a very operative word. It just means it hadn't crossed his brain just yet. Well, here's what I can signify. I can guarantee you this. Players, obviously, they're going to show up. They're going to talk about whatever the hell's going on in their lives. They're going to do a little chit-chat, and they're going to do a little, as we would like to say, talking BS and all that other nonsense. But I can guarantee you this. There is no way in hell that both Goff and Aiden Hutchinson being in the same spot talking to Myles Garrett, a guy who has been directly linked as a potential trade target for the Detroit Lions, I can guarantee you there is no way in hell that those two did not at all try to do any sort of recruiting. That would absolutely have been ridiculous on their part had they not tried. Because you have to think about it. For the Detroit Lions and for the NFL and everybody else that knows about what's going on here and all this potential rumors and talks and everything else, everybody knows that if the Lions were to somehow get their hands on Myles Garrett and pair him with Aiden Hutchinson and Zadarius Smith, you would have, there's not even an argument, you would have without doubt the best defensive line and pass rushing tandem in the entirety of the NFL. Because think about it. Once you got everybody back healthy, you would have, in the middle, Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader as your starters. Then on the edges, you'd have Hutch and Myles Garrett, and then you'd also have a rotating Zadarius Smith between both edges. And you could also move the edges of Hutch and, Myles Garrett wherever the Thunder you wanted to on said defense. So right there, that is just an absolute monster of a tandem. And I would be willing to bet my bottom dollar that, Hutch at the very least was talking in terms like that. Because it's like, dude, I guarantee you that Hutch realizes probably better than anybody else, because I actually heard an interview, and I think it was when he was with Rich Eisen about, I think it was actually with Pat McAfee, pardon me. And they were talking about how, what his worst pain was as far as the season was. Was it actually getting injured, or was it the fact of realizing that he was having such a fantastic season, what it was looking like for the Lions, and then all of a sudden, 5 games in, he has a season-ending injury. And Hutch himself acknowledged the fact that while the pain of the physical injury was tremendous, it was more painful recognizing and realizing that, yes, he was having a special season and that the Lions could have had a special season had that injury not occurred. Because, again, Hutch had 7.5 sacks in 5 games. Could you imagine had Hutch stayed healthy along with the rest of the Lions defense where this Lions team could have been right now? It could have been competing for a Super Bowl. It very well could have. But now you have to think about it this way. If you're able to get Hutch back and, he's going to be healthy like he usually is, and that means, all the stuff that comes with that, and then you're able to get a guy like Myles Garrett, who is currently in his prime, probably going to be in his prime for at least another 2 or 3 more years, and you still got Zadarius Smith, who's still an excellent edge rusher in his own right. You put that all on a defense that is going to be hungry, motivated, along with an offense that's also going to have a hunger and a motivation. You've got the makings of a team that is just going to absolutely be dominant as hell. Now, getting back to the picture itself, the fact that Goff is there is also very interesting to me. Now, why is that the case? Most people wouldn't think too much about this, but to me it actually is kind of interesting because Goff, as being the quarterback of the Detroit Lions and also being considered, as was said last night at the NFL Honors Awards by Aiden Hutchinson, he is considered in the NFL now one of the elite quarterbacks. He is considered one of the best. And on top of that, you have to consider the fact that he's the franchise quarterback of the Detroit Lions. This is a guy that gets a lot of recognition around the NFL. I mean, last night, if you take a look at it, yes, Jared Goff did not win any of the awards that he was nominated for, which I think is a crying shame because I think at the very least, he should have won Walter Payton of the Man of the Year award. Because last night was the second time in 3 years he's been nominated for the award, And I would have figured that the NFL would have been like, hey, this guy's been nominated twice in 3 years. He didn't win the MVP award. Let's, for 2 years out of 3, this guy's has been a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. Let's give him that. Because you can't say that Jared Goff does not do any sort of, charity events. He doesn't give back to the community. To be a Walter Payton Man of the Year award twice in 3 years, you definitely got to have that. And Goff has given back so much to the Detroit community. And Detroit, considering what it used to be, considering where it is now, that's not only a huge, what's the word I'm trying to use here? That's not only a huge recognition for him as far as what he's put into the community, but also how the community has transformed ever since he's gotten here because of the success that he has that he has brought along with the rest of the guys that have been brought with the Lions. But think about this. Goff is one of those guys that could definitely use his influence as one of those top players, one of those most recognizable, one of those most influential players to get Myles Garrett further on board. It's one thing when you've got a guy like Aiden Hutchinson who's part of that same position group, and they're both talking, and they're saying, man, what would happen if we could be paired together in tandem and all this nonsense? That's one thing. But when you got a guy like Jared Goff who's considered one of the most influential players in the NFL, that's something else to consider. And then I have to put this out there. Even though this guy's not in the picture, don't tell me for a damn second that Zadarius Smith was not at all talking to either one or both of our players in regards to Myles Garrett. Again, I'm telling you this right now. There's no proof of this, but I would again be highly, highly suspicious if Zadarius Smith hadn't said something to either Hutchinson or Goff or both when knowing that Myles Garrett was going to be there and say, hey, these are some things you might want to consider about when you're talking with Myles because, oh, that's right, I played with him for a couple of years. I know how to get him to potentially talk to you, but I also know that certain things are going to start a conversation. And again, one of the biggest things you want when you're trying to talk to somebody is to make a good first impression. Because Goff and Myles Garrett have not really had sort of a personal interaction, except maybe on the field. And the same thing is also true for Aiden Hutchinson. But if you can lay the groundwork and you can have a good first impression, not only from a personal perspective, but also as a professional perspective of, okay, this is what our organization represents because these are two of our best players, again, you're making a concerted effort by trying to show a guy that clearly has got a lot of interest around the NFL as being a trade target that, hey, we are a team you definitely want to come to. Not only are we one of the best teams from last year going 15-2, but also we have a top-end organization, we have top-end players who are highly professional and are highly motivated. Because think about it here. Let me put this last thing out here before I end this. Goff and, Hutchinson, they could have decided to just completely ignore the fact that Myles Garrett was there and say, you know what, this is not my avenue of things that I need to do. I'm not the GM. I'm not a recruiter. I don't have to do this. But yet, both Goff and Hutchinson sought out Myles Garrett. Think about that. They both sought him out and decided, hey, let's have a conversation with this guy. Let's give him an impression of what he could get, what he could receive if he comes to Detroit. Again, I've said this before. Do I think the Lions are likely going to make a trade for Myles Garrett? Again, I don't think it's likely. But again, I'm not ruling it out. And I'm going to say this. I sure as hell am not against the idea. I like the idea of trading for Myles Garrett. The thing that I've always been caught up on is how do you make it work as far as the cost is concerned? If Brad Holmes can somehow justify in his mind the idea of trading and taking on all that extra responsibility, not only in the fact of losing draft picks, but also picking up the salary cap that's associated with Myles Garrett, then I'm totally cool with it. Again, when I talk about Myles Garrett, I'm not talking about it from a place of negativity or I don't want it to happen. Oh, believe you me, I would love nothing better than to get Myles Garrett. Because if we were to get him and pair him, like I said, absolute just complete pandemonium would happen in the NFL. And like I've said earlier, you would put the NFL on its ear pairing Hutch, Za'Darius, McNeil, Reeder, and Myles Garrett all on the same defensive line. Dude, you would not have a single offensive line that could try and stop that. I don't care who the hell you are. And it would be absolutely ridiculous trying to prepare for that. So the fact that picture was snapped last night at the NFL Honors Awards ceremony tells me that at the very least, the Lions players are making a concerted effort to try and get Myles Garrett to try and come to Detroit, to want to come to Detroit. Because it's not just Hutchinson and Goff last night who were actually talking to him. We also know that Amon-Ra St. Brown on his podcast is saying, yes, I would like Myles Garrett to come to Detroit. He's also recruiting him, albeit indirectly, but it's still recruiting. Think about that. If you're Myles Garrett, you've now had 3 of the top players from the Detroit Lions, the number 1 seed from this year, recruit you. Indirectly and directly. Think about that. If you're a player, what greater sign of respect could you possibly have but to have 3 of the best players from that team directly and indirectly say, we want you here? And again, for Myles Garrett, wanting the trade, he's going to hold a hell of a lot more leverage on the back end to try and tell the Browns, listen, I want out and this is where I want to go. You need to start making this happen, or otherwise I can make your lives just as miserable as you can make mine. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to talk about this because I saw it last night and I was like, okay, I already know that this is going to have a massive effect for the Lions fandom, and it's going to have to be talked about. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on this. But anyway, folks, I'm going to end this episode. So with that, I just want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage you all to watch the next episode. Also encourage you all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage you all to please do this. Make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way, guys, never miss any more content that I'm pushing out. So that way, guys, you always know when something new is coming out so you can come right back to the channel. Also, all I express to you all, please share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can, because the more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the content. Hope you all got something out of it. Whether it's the first time you guys are watching me or you guys have been watching me for the upteenth time, that's what I hope I can bring to you guys, is something, whether it's something that's exciting and fun or something new and something interesting to think about. Also hope everybody out there has something in their lives that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.